Alright guys, so check this out. As I'm getting ready for my trip across America, I've started selling a crapload of my stuff and using the money to invest in things for the trip. The Mavic Air 2, for example. But in some magical cases, out there somewhere special is a company who makes this whole thing just a bit easier. And that's what we'll be talking about today. This is the AK2000s from FeiyuTech. This is a full-size DSLR gimbal which is going to help me tremendously for when I decide to make documentaries, movies, or music videos on the road. So let's take a look at this thing and find out if this gimbal is worth any recognition. First thing we're going to look at today is the build quality. This gimbal looks absolutely gorgeous and it feels great as well. The black is sleek and the wood handle adds a premium look to it that I've really fallen in love with. I do have to say the wood is very smooth, and after using this gimbal a while, it's a bit slippery, so if you plan on using this gimbal often, you may want to wear gloves with rubber palms or get some kind of grip for this thing to make it less slick. Now the gimbal itself is 2.4 pounds or 1 kilogram, which is really heavy for a gimbal, but ensures durability. This thing is sturdy as hell with how thick it is, and to me that's very important. I've had phone gimbals before, and they may as well have been made of plastic, and they broke down very quickly. With how this thing is built, I highly doubt that's going to be an issue. Camera capacity is up to 4.8 pounds or 2.2 kilograms, which is great. This will hold the majority of DSLR cameras on the market, even if they have a heavy lens attached to them. This moves us into the battery, which is a 2200 mAh battery, which in perfectly balanced conditions is rated to last 14 hours of continuous use. This will also depend on the weight of your camera and if you truly do have it perfectly balanced, but that's freaking impressive. What sucks about this though is the battery's not removable, and this is one thing that I know will be a turnoff for professional gimbal users. If someone's shooting a wedding, or an anniversary, or a legitimately important life event, and the camera guy runs out of the gimbal battery, he's going to want to hot swap it right there and keep going. He's not going to want to take a USB-C, I don't care that this thing is fast charging, he's not going to want to sit down and wait for an hour just so he can get going again. I think that was a bit of a poor move on FeiyuTech's part. But the battery capacity is huge, and for what I'm going to be using it for, I don't see myself running into this issue. So long as I charge it after I've finished using it. The next feature is the super fast and very responsive LCD touchscreen, which I'm so glad this has. This is really nice because you don't have to rely on an app to get your gimbal locked in. But FeiyuTech also does have an app that has a lot of the touchscreen features and more built right in, to really get those perfect settings dialed in. I'm just so glad about the versatility with this thing. One thing I bet a lot of people were really happy to see them implement were the axis locks on every position of the gimbal. It's so easy to lock this thing back into place and pack it away, or lock it up when you're not using it and don't want your camera swinging around all over the place. They also lock individually on every single axis, and I cannot tell you how easy that makes balancing your camera. You just lock them all up, balance the axis, lock that axis, and keep on going. Moving down to the bottom of the gimbal, we have two threads, a 1/4 inch and a 3/8. And they also provide a tripod stand with this gimbal right out of the box. You can use this as an extra grip or as a tripod to set the gimbal down. This tripod they give you is really nice, fully made of metal, has rubber grips, and even tension screws on each individual leg so that if one leg gets loose, you just tighten it back up again. The attention to detail in these accessories really impressed me when it came to this company. This is easily the most affordable gimbal of its class, and for all of its features and specs here, it easily competes with $400 to $500 gimbals, especially for features and usability. Now this gets us to the part of the gimbal that made my heart jump out of my chest, the underslung grip. This thing adds so much control when using the gimbal. It's comfortable, easy to hold, and really balances the weight a lot better while giving you easier access to more versatile shots and positions. Next up, we're going to talk about the software features and other accessories. The first one being this Arca Quick Release. If you've ever used one of these before, you know how awesome they are. They make for easy camera switching and fast attachment and detachment, and the fact that they gave you one of these is great. The sucky part, I don't know if they didn't give me a ring for it or they just want you to use a screwdriver, but this whole thing would have been a lot better if it did come with a twist ring. You seriously want me to carry around a screwdriver just to put this on? What the heck were you thinking, FeiyuTech? This isn't the only tool they want you to carry around with you either, but more on that later. Another thing they give you that I really liked was this lens stabilizer, just to make sure your lens doesn't sag. I've seen other gimbals not come with these and people use zip ties to keep their lens from bobbing around, and it's so cool that they added this. Then you have all your cables, and they give you a crap load of them for pretty much every big name camera brand. Sony, Canon, Panasonic, Nikon, you get the picture. Now looking at the gimbal from the front, you'll see 3 buttons. The middle button here with the circle on it is your shutter release. To the right of that is the camera modes, which allows you to switch from photos and videos. Then to the left, you have a button that controls the gimbal modes without having to touch the LCD screen. One tap of the button switches between locked mode and pan, then 2 presses for pan and tilt, and then 3 presses for the full axis mode. Above those buttons is a thumbstick, which really helps out in getting some awesome reveal shots. Then of course you have your touchscreen menu. Page 1 is the different gimbal modes, page 2 is shooting features, page 3 is gimbal settings, and then to the left of page 1, you can control some in-camera settings like exposure and ISO. To the right of the gimbal, you have the power button. A long press turns it on and off, while a short press will lock the screen so you don't accidentally mess up any settings while you're shooting. Double tapping the power button will put it into standby mode, which deactivates the motors and saves your battery, and a short press will turn them back on. Then under that, you have a USB-C for charging and firmware updates. On the left of the gimbal, you have a knob that lets you control a signal access like pan or tilt. On the back of the gimbal, there's a trigger, which is really neat. One press puts the gimbal into pan and tilt mode, a double tap will send it back to its default center, and then a triple tap will set it to vlogger selfie mode. I love this feature and it would be especially good for walking podcasts. Now, if you do get this gimbal, there's one thing I recommend you do. I'm going to show you some footage soon of the first time that I ever used it. I never played around with any settings, I just balanced the camera and went crazy. But if you buy this thing and you want the ultimate smoothness, go to the shooting mode options, click the custom button, set the follow speed to the lowest possible setting, and then set the dead zone from 50 to 75%. This will give you a lot more control and will really make your footage look a lot smoother. Alright, so now I'm going to show you the 3 clips. This first clip is of me walking around my house with just the GH5's auto smoothness setting turned on. No gimbal attached. The camera's built-in auto stabilizer is on, so it'll still be smooth, but it won't be like gimbal smooth. Now the one thing I can't use with the gimbal is my zooms. I can't do that with the gimbal. The second video, I have my camera attached to the gimbal. No settings changed. This is just me walking normal, by the way. I'm gonna take the camera off the gimbal later and do another test of me walking around and see what it looks like. Let's do a straight walk. And then the third video is of me with the new smoothness settings that I just talked about.
Haha, it's not fair. I live in Oregon and you don't. I get to test this here. You live in Japan where you don't get this kind of shit.
People that live in Montana.
They win.
Now the last feature that I want to talk about is the inception mode. This setting is amazing. I've seen other gimbals try to implement this and it's either difficult to use or just kind of gimmicky, but this one is incredibly easy to set up and makes for some really fun shots. It's just built right into the software and I for one am pleased. Now comes the part of the video where I'm going to discuss the pros and cons of this gimbal after I've used it. Now, I don't have as many pros as I do cons in this list because everything I mentioned in the video this far was pretty much all pros. I've loved practically everything about this gimbal, so if this list is shorter than the cons, that's why. The first pro is the fact that this is easily the most affordable gimbal of its class. This thing, from its features, accessories, software, versatility, and usability, is on par with some high-end gimbals, and I respect FeiyuTech a lot for making this so obtainable. You don't have to spend $500 just to get into an entry-level gimbal anymore, which is great. Now the fact that there are 3 USBs and a USB-C for camera connections is awesome. The attention to detail is great, and I know I mentioned it before, but individual tension screws on every leg, very nice. I'm also really glad that it comes with so many necessary accessories, and they don't make you buy the add-ons. The underslung, the lens stabilizer, the Arco quick release, and all the cables for big camera brands, not to mention the axis locks. I could go on all day, but I already mentioned all this stuff, so let's get into the cons. Alright, now I do have a few of these, and don't think that I dislike this piece of tech because of them. This is an amazing gadget, but there are some things here that do annoy me. The first con I already mentioned, but the fact that you cannot remove the battery, can't hot swap the batteries, that's annoying. I don't like the idea that one day this whole thing is going to be rendered useless because the battery inevitably petered out over time. I don't like the idea of sitting down next to a wall for an hour because it needs to charge instead of just swapping the battery out for a different one. Yeah, it's a large battery, and yeah, you can even use this battery to charge your damn phone, which is sweet. But it would have been a nice feature and really would have been a solid move on FeiyuTech's part had this been swappable, especially for professionals who shoot movies or events all day. The second con is the underslung. Now I know I was praising this thing earlier and I absolutely adore this thing. However, there are a few things about it that I don't like very much. For example, when you attach this thing to your gimbal and then you remove it, you're going to scratch your gimbal. You just are. They didn't make very prominent indents for you to screw this into. You really have to shove it in there, screw it in, and then rip it off when you're done. I've seen other companies have easy attach-detach underslungs where they just pop on and off. But not this thing. You actually have to carry around 3 screws, 2 large and then a smaller one, and an Allen key to attach and remove this thing. So not only do I have to carry around a screwdriver to screw the Arca quick release to my camera, but now I have to carry around these things too because FeiyuTech didn't want to design an easy pop-in pop-off system. I just dislike that I have to take so much time to put this thing together, and then I have to remove it to fit it back into the box that it came in. So it's a guarantee that I'm going to scratch this gimbal, a guarantee that I'm going to be taking the time to break it down and set it all back up, and a guarantee that I'm carrying around tools just to get this thing set up in the first place. Not a big deal for sure, but there could have been a bit more forethought on their part. Now aside from the underslung, this box they give you is kind of annoying as well. I love that it has space for every individual part, and it makes me inclined to carry the gimbal around in this thing, right? Only issue is that if I do want to use this box to pack it away, I have to reset the gimbal back to its factory position or it's not going to fit in the box anymore. This is kind of annoying. Here I am having dialed in the balance for my camera perfectly, which takes some time, mind you. I use the gimbal for a while, and then if I want to put it back in the box, I have to reset it or it won't fit. This makes me want to get a bag for this gimbal, and I may just do that so I can carry the underslung on the thing at all times. I know it's a small complaint, but it's just kind of sucky. This is a nice box. Yeah, it's styrofoam, but you really wouldn't need anything else if they had spots for you when you had the thing all connected. The last con is that it's heavy and a bit slippery, and those things don't run hand in hand well. I definitely recommend grips, and if you don't already, you may want to hit the gym. Then again, the underslung really helps you balance that weight, which is helpful. I just wish it didn't scratch up the sides of my poor gimbal here. As far as gimbals go, this really is a nice one. It's very reasonably priced, has all the features an amateur like me would want, handles like a dream, and comes with practically everything you'd need. I honestly think this is the best gimbal on the market for its price. Not that it'll beat out gimbals of higher classes, but for its class, FeiyuTech did an amazing job. I know for many people getting into the film industry is tricky. There are a lot of options from gimbals, drones, cameras, and lenses, and if I can offer any advice to you guys to keep you motivated with all this, buy a digital camera. It's so easy to stay positive when you have a digital camera, because with digital, there are no negatives. Oh god, sorry about that. I have a friend who's a photographer and she always makes these camera jokes. I honestly can't shut her up. Bye guys.